Okay, hello. And we are back for a very quick live. I did want to pop on and I wanted to film something, and this is quicker than actually doing a video because I don't have as much to do in post. So I want to do a quick live and talk a little bit about the things we paint over. So I don't have the chat up. I'll put it up in a little while, but I'm not going to have a lot of time for questions at the end, so I might have to cut that section out today. We'll see how we do. This isn't going to be super long. What we paint over and why we paint over things. Now, I was listening to, I don't know, a YouTube video, and it was some line in there about, it was actually just a painting class, and they were talking about how you paint over, you do this and you paint over stuff, and you, almost like you're painting over your, I don't want to use the word trauma, but I'm gonna allow it here, and we're gonna use it here. As you paint over your trauma to move on to the next step, right? So I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive on what things do we paint over and what things do we almost put a spotlight on and make them, well, the old saying was, you make a mountain out of a molehill. But you don't hear that saying as much anymore. Those old sayings. But that is something we do as humans, right? And we also paint over things that we really need to look at. So when you're in your human aspect, you're going to find you're going to make the little things big and the big things little. Because the big things that we should be really looking at are not things that we want to really dive into, right? But the little things, we kind of want to exasperate them. So it's kind of opposite. So when you're trying to figure out what aspect of me is in charge, which is in the beginning of our ascension, it takes a while for us to figure that out. What aspect of me is talking here? What aspect of me is making these choices? And in the beginning, we can't tell if it's our ego, our human aspect, or if it's one of our higher aspects, right? So we kind of go back and forth, like who's really talking here? How do I know the difference? One thing I started to realize was if I was really over analyzing something and making it bigger than it was 100% my human aspect. If it had to do with money, if it had to do with, I'm going to use obsession here. Anything distorted love type of human distorted love types of things. Obsessing about what somebody thinks, obsessing about what someone's going to do, and you see that a lot when you get into the twin matrices. We kind of obsess about what the other side of us, in a sense, is going to do. And technically everyone is a twin. I always like to throw that in because we can get really bogged down on the romantic twins. That's normally how you see it represented, and that's normally what people like to kind of hone in on. It gets more clicks if you just talk about the romantic twin, but technically everyone you meet is a twin of something, of an aspect of you. But there are people that the romantic ones tend to be the ones that push us forward the most, and that's just how that is. They're just the ones that kind of get us going, and they get us pushing in one direction or the other, and that's what they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to hold us back. They're not supposed to keep us from going in a certain direction. They're supposed to push us there. Now, is usually more of a metaphorical push and not a literal push, because they push us there because we can't go down the road with them we want to go. So we have to take a side road, but that's not the road we want. We want to go down the road that seems like it's the most human road to go down when you're talking about twin flames, because the twin flame, the whole thing about twin flames, they're very rooted in that romantic Disney story kind of thing, right? And when it doesn't work out that way, we start to compromise. We start to really compromise on a soul level. We start to kind of twist and turn ourselves to be something else to stay in the reality with the person. Whereas the whole point of them being here is to push us out of that reality, to push us to help us clear something, to push us into a different aspect of ourselves, to get us to go farther than we were going to go on our own, to see programming we cannot see. And when we talk about painting over stuff, painting over the big stuff because we don't want to work with it, your human aspect is never going to want to work with the big stuff. okay? And even if it wants to work with the big stuff, it's going to try to work with it on a very superficial level. Because the whole point of the human aspect is to keep us from not working on the big stuff, working on ancestral karma, working on abundance karma, working on clearing our deep-seated fear programming, working on clearing our human akash, our human karma. And we have karma from everywhere. We are multidimensional, but in the beginning, we're just working on human karma. We can't even deal with our multidimensional karma. You know, we're too busy trying to figure out just our day-to-day human shit. We don't have time for the other stuff. So when we set back and say, okay, I don't have time for that, let me just work on my human karma. We don't want to do that. When you start pulling apart your human experience, it is jarring. It is mind-blowing. It's mind-bending. That's why in the beginning it feels easier. And I'm going to say it feels easier because when you start getting, I do a lot of videos about the fourth dimension. I guess I don't do a lot, but I do the ones I have done seem to resonate a lot with people because a lot of the collectives are kind of hitting that fourth dimension right now. So when you're in the fourth dimension, you start waking up to, there's more going on here than just the physical realm. There's more going on here than just the rules of the human beliefs. There's more going on here. There's something else that doesn't feel right. You know, if you've ever had that feeling, I used to have this feeling all the time in the early 2000s, like you just feel like you're in the wrong place, the wrong time. You wake up with this dread feeling. If you've never had it, it's hard to describe it really, but if you've had it, you know what I'm talking about, where it feels like it's off. You know, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm running behind. I'm not getting to where I need to be getting to. I'm going to have to go through a massive kind of correction phase because I don't even know where I'm supposed to be. I just know it's not here. Now, technically, you never can really be in the wrong place, but you start to feel like, well, why do I feel like I'm off? Why do I feel like I should be somewhere else? Why do I feel like this isn't right? Why do I feel like I'm not, it's not flowing like it's supposed to flow? But even in that sense, we don't even realize that's what's wrong. The whole term, go with the flow, being in flow and going with the flow, they're two separate things. A human's going to say, go with the flow. But we have to learn to be in flow. And those are two different energies. It's not just going along with what everyone else thinks. It's going along with our organic plan. But our organic plan is not our human plan. And that's where we start to hit the rub. You know, we start to hit that point where we don't understand why. You know, why is it that, why can't it be that way? And it takes us a while to realize that our soul aligned realities are not our human ones. So the stuff we brush aside on a human level, things that upset us, things that scare us, that's a big one. We don't like to be afraid. We don't like to get into the fear of something. See, so many people, if you just bring up a fear of death, which is a massive fear in the collective, you saw a lot of that fear clearing during the COVID realities, because so many people were so afraid of dying. So many people cut so many things out of their life just on that fear alone, right? The fear of dying. When our human gets pushed against the wall, and this is not just to watch what your human aspect's going to do, you can see it in other people when they go into their human aspect. No matter how conscious they might be, right? And consciousness can be hitting that consciousness for 20 minutes and then going back to do the rest of your day. You know, it's almost like that meditation. It's a spirituality component of awakening where you can hit a certain consciousness and understand things, but you're not bringing anything down. You're not embodying that stuff in yet, because that means changing a lot of stuff. And we're not ready to do that. One, we don't really recognize yet what we have to change. And two, if we did, we don't know how to align it to its highest. So a lot of the fifth dimension is kind of walking away from stuff. And you start to even do that in the higher consciousness places in the end of that fourth dimensional place. Because we talked about you're going to have different levels of consciousness even within a dimension. You know, it's not just one dimension, one consciousness. You're going to have different, you know, not levels to compare, but just levels to explain. There are different spaces in there. So when you're in that fourth dimension, one, we don't know what's really fucked up yet. Two, and if we do, we're not ready to deal with it because we don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to align that to my highest yet. I don't even know what that means yet. You know, I'm going to keep trying to fix it. So people will hear the word alignment and let me align it in a human way. And that's not working. And you can kind of rearrange the chairs in the Titanic only so many times and you realize It's just not working. Why can't I align it to my highest? Because wait, I haven't remembered how to do that yet. I haven't lived from my higher aspects long enough to know how do I even align it from my highest. So we can kind of beat ourselves up in the beginning about walking away from certain things, and we feel the judgment from the human beliefs that and everyone else in our reality saying, oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't walk away from that. You shouldn't walk away from that. You shouldn't walk away from your job. You shouldn't walk away from your debt. You shouldn't walk away from your family. Whatever it is we're walking away from. Now, part of that is they're going to speak the fears back to us so we can clear the fear. You know, that's a big part of it. You know, they're going to, humans are, the people in our reality are going to say things back to us. And if it doesn't bother you, then that's kind of another thing we get to. You see this a lot, especially in the fourth dimension. It is classic. I did the same thing. People say something and we immediately will say, well, that's theirs. That's not mine, right? That's their shit to work out. They're really screwed up on that, or they're unconscious and they don't understand, but that's their stuff, not my stuff. If you feel any reaction at all, it's your stuff. You know, it's said to you to show you, hey, that's your stuff. You still got to work through that. But those are the things we paint over. We try to say, oh, no, that belongs to somebody else. No, that's not mine to work out. If it's in your reality, very rarely, it's not yours. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. Normally it happens, though, when you really start to embody higher states of consciousness and live from those states for a while, where you can really look at something and say, yeah, that's not mine. That belongs to them, because I have no reaction to that. You know, I can watch the news with other people, which I never watch the news, but if I'm passing through a room and it's on and someone says something to it, I don't link up to those collectives anymore. I don't care. You know, so I know when someone else is getting really upset about it and it's presented in my reality, I have no reaction to it at all. That's all been cleared a long time ago for me. So I don't have any reaction. But it takes a while for us to get there. And in the beginning, that's kind of our knee-jerk reaction. When anything happens in our environment, especially once we start on that spirituality path, whether it's getting into just attracting things, like The Secret. The Secret was big on that, getting people to just feel the energy of something and understand the energy of something and understand if we think about something, we can bring it in. And those are very scratching the surface things about what we're able to do, because what you find is you're trying to bring them in from your human ego aspect. Once again, because we don't know yet what our soul values in a sense. We're still trying to get all the stuff we want to get. I want to get a lot of money. I want to get that person. I want to get that job. I want to get that, whatever, that car. And I'm trying to bring all this stuff in, which the soul doesn't give a shit about any of that stuff. But that's the stuff, that's the place and the energy we're trying to manifest from. Or even that word manifest becomes a very human word, because it feels almost like you are not doing it consciously, or it feels like you're what's the word I want to use for that? It's almost like you're subservient to that, you know, whereas when you get into change it to creation, it feels like you're more in charge of that. Like I'm creating that with my universe helping me create that, but really I'm just my universe anyway, so it's just me creating that. So when we start to get in the fourth dimension, we will paint over a lot of stuff because we can't deal with it. We don't know what it means to deal with it, or we're just in denial, straight ass denial about how conscious we think we are and how conscious we are about consciousness. And that's a lot of ways to use the word consciousness. But I think you get where I'm going with that. We get so wrapped up in ourselves because we're still coming at it from predominantly living from our human aspect. So it's kind of comical when you look back at those days, or even if you can get the perspective now and look at some of the ways we reacted in those dimensions where you think you're so far down the road and you really just started on the path. Spirituality is opening of the path. Any spirituality book is technically, it's just the opening up of the fifth dimension. If we have anything rooted still in the third dimension, we're still technically in a fourth dimensional state, because that's what fourth dimensional is. It's 1 foot in 3D, which is just human realities, human beliefs, living in the human constructs of your reality. That's, I don't want to really use the word constructed again, but it's built on the human systems, right? And then fifth dimension, which is But the more heavenly realities, you're starting to feel colors are brighter. You're starting to really feel your eyes get brighter. That's a big one in that reality. Your eyes get brighter. You just glow. You feel more in tune with source consciousness, because you can hit the frequency of it, but you haven't embodied it yet. You haven't brought it down to it. You're just feeling it. But if you never feel it, you don't know where you're going. But it is just the beginning. But when we get in that state, because we have any enlightenment at all, we feel like we have kind of finished the journey, and everything that happens that is at that point discordant. And you see those things all the time, the memes, the posters, like, if you disrupt my peace, then that's the most important thing to me. I always think of the part in I think it was 21 Jump Street, when the guy was talking about his house, like, this is my temple. You can't come in here and knock metaphorical vases off and get me all upset. It's kind of like that. That's kind of the way we puff up about it. Like, this is my piece. We don't really know what it is yet, but the little bit we have achieved, you're disrupting it. But what we haven't realized yet is it's not someone else disrupting it. We're allowing it, to be disrupted, and we've allowed these realities to go on now, and now they're starting to disrupt. They're just as disruptive as they were 2 years ago, 2 minutes ago, 2 months ago, but because my frequency is raising, I'm noticing it's disruptive. But we immediately want to put it on the other people who are in the reality with us, that it's their fault it's disruptive. I've got to get rid of these people, get out of this situation. But once again, not quite ready to walk away yet. I don't want the backlash from walking away. That's a big one when we talk about painting over things. We don't want the backlash of walking away from stuff. But that's our own stuff. People just say that back to us. We don't want to be judged for it. That's our own judgment. If we don't hold the judgment for it, then no one's going to do that. Things can only exist in your reality if you believe them. The biggest lies we tell ourselves are the ones that we actually do believe. What do you really believe? What do you really believe is going to happen? I walked away from a lot of stuff when I exited out and completely went into fifth dimensional and above realities with no ties to third dimensional realities or fourth dimensional realities anymore, and completely walked out of them. I left a lot of stuff behind. I walked away from a lot of stuff, a lot of people, and a lot of stuff. Now, a lot of that, because I couldn't align it and couldn't deal with it, would come back around. You almost put a pin in some things. It's almost like if you have a big board, and you would just put a pin in. It always reminds me of I've been watching Only Murders in the Building, and they do the little pins of all the suspects, and they have the yarn, and that's kind of what we do, really. We'll kind of put a pin in that reality because we can't align it. It's probably going to go by the wayside, and sometimes you'll just know from within, deep inside of you, you'll just know, just don't worry about it. Just let that fall away. Don't worry about it. And some stuff will fall away, and you won't have to deal with it at all. Some things will have to be dealt with, but it could be years down the road when you actually get to the consciousness, body consciousness, which means you've anchored it in the body where you can now align it. You can see what you need to do, and you not only can see what you need to do, you have the capability to do it. And that means you can speak it. You can walk the walk in a sense. You're not just saying the words. Fourth dimensional realities, we're just saying the words. In fifth dimensional reality, we're kind of just saying the words. We're not living it. We're not embodying it. We're not thinking about other people. The human, that's another big thing for the human ego, is that you think it is a one person reality, and that's the only person in it, and everything revolves around that. And if we try to convince ourselves that we really thinking about other people, when we really dig into it, we can always see the me in every reality we created and why we wanted it to go down that way. Why we wanted it that way, why it had to go down that way. We can always go back to ourselves. There's not one human reality we will create that was really for the benefit of anyone but ourselves. But these are things we try to paint over. We try to pretend like, oh, no, I was doing that for them. We don't do shit for anybody else in our human experience, okay? It's all about us. It's supposed to be. And then it does shift for a while where you're doing it all about you, but for a different outcome. In our human realities, it's all about us, but it's also to impress everybody else, right? Once you start getting into the fifth dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, we start to take a lot of time out for ourselves, but we also understand that we're trying to build up our soul light. We're trying to build up our soul. I'm going to use the word energy, but we're building up so we can support other people, right? Energetically, monetarily, because money is just energy. Eventually we will be, the supporters in a lot of different realities. For a while, you're going to be supported. It's going to flip and flop as you go through different dimensions. But everything we have to learn to do from our highest aspects. That's why a lot of stuff, we feel like we repeat it because we do it once from our human aspect, and then all of a sudden I got to do it again. But now I have to be a higher aspect, but in that same role in a reality, whether it's being supported or being a supporter in that reality, whether it be with money, with your energy, with whatever it is you can bring to the reality. So there's a lot of flipping and flopping, and going back and forth and seeing one thing and then looking at it in a different way and then saying, well, I feel like I did this before, but did you do it from your highest aspect? And can you do it differently now from your highest aspect? Those realities you couldn't align 3 years ago, can you now do that? Are you supposed to? Sometimes it'll be the same people that come back, the exact same thing, or sometimes it'll just be a whole different situation, but it's going to be the same energetics of what we could not deal with before. Your universe will make it easy to get out once you take the step to get out. I see so many people that almost wall themselves in to these human realities because they don't want to leave, and they think if they build the walls high enough that they won't have to. Even though they're not happy in the reality, and they're basically walling themselves in with the enemy, which is themselves, they'll keep doing that. Well, I'm going to keep walling myself in here because I don't want to go do this. I don't want to have to get out and do anything else. This might not be the happiest reality in the world. It sucks, but at least I know what it is. We go through that so much, and we do so much of that, the bargaining, the trying to say, if I can just keep this, but this has to go. I kind of want to keep this. Looking at what we want to keep. Why do we want to keep this? Is there a human reason, or is it a purpose for it in the higher dimensional realities to keep something? Most of the stuff, pretty much all the stuff we have in our human experience is not going with you. It's just not. And every time I say that, I can see the eyes roll. When I've taught classes and when we discuss this type of stuff, it's where a lot of people, and that's where I checked out. When I was listening to people tell me that, the minute they got to that stuff, I was like, oh, that's not me. I'm not going to have to do that. I'll be able to keep everything because my stuff's so aligned. Because until you get to until your frequency raises high enough to where you can actually feel that this isn't aligned anymore, we still think it's all aligned. We haven't kind of crossed that threshold yet. We haven't gotten to DEFCON 1 yet where it's like something is severely wrong here. Like, none of these situations work anymore. I don't even like these people anymore. I don't want to be in these places anymore. Everything feels off because vibrationally it is off. People who used to be nice to you, all of a sudden, they're not respectful anymore because they're telling you to go. They're playing their part. You're supposed to leave now. Why are you still sitting here? These are the things we don't want to see. So I'm going to leave it there because I don't have a lot more time to kind of explore that. But I think that's kind of a good opening to where we really can start to frame, what are we painting over? What are we not looking at? What are we saying it's fine because we don't want to deal with it? And even if we were going to deal with it, what aspect of us can deal with it? So there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to find that, yeah, it's not aligned. Can I keep it for a while? I know it's not aligned, right? And there's a lot of times I would play this game with my universe. I know it's not aligned. Can there be something I can align now that can keep this around? I'd always also say, be kind to me. This one kind of means a lot to me right now. Be kind to me. If I got to ease out of this reality, at least let me ease out of it easily, Let me take a graceful bow. I don't want to do it. I just have to just leave it all immediately. I'm not ready for that yet. Vibrationally, I'm not in that place yet. I've got too many cords to it. I'm too upset about it. Make it an easy, a long extraction in a sense for some of these, and you'll know those ones for you. And you'll know your sticking points. You'll know the things that you don't really care about. And even years down the road, when you're in different dimensions and different realities, you'll look back at a lot of these and realize, well, how was I trying so hard to hang on? I don't want to do the next part of my journey. When it's obvious the next part of my journey, I had to go do, you know, and it was a pretty awesome part, even though it might not have been the sexy one. You know, I always say that our human wants a sexy reality. And a lot of these in the beginning, when we're clearing, even in the middle, when we're clearing and we're trying to clear karma and we're trying to reset reality. So we have to have a lot of time in between. We have to have a lot of time by ourselves. We have to do a lot of things on our own, because you can't become your own universe and sovereign if you're depending on everyone else to do something. It doesn't work like that. So if you're always doing it by yourself, you're going to find yourself having to have others assist, because you're going to be doing the opposite. And if you've always had other people to do it for you, well, you're about to get pushed out of the nest. And those are uncomfortable things, because they go against what our humans try to do and what our humans try to live. It pushes us out of that comfort zone, no matter what your comfort zone was. So I'll check my questions quickly to see if I have anything I can do. Okay, I do have some questions. Opinions on different things, but I'm not sure I know who any of these people are. So if you give me a little bit more, I might be able to answer that. Some of these people I don't know kind of the names there. So I will say, a lot of the questions there, opinions on different, sometimes it's different. I'll get this a lot when you talk about different books people will read, you know, different, and everyone kind of can come through. A lot of the books we come through with are similar. A lot of the past we come through, and I mean come through, like leave the third dimension going into the fourth. A lot of these things are extremely similar. How we kind of come in and out, right? The Secret's a big one. You know, people are also into, I like the Seth books quite a bit. Both channeled work, depending on how people feel about channeled work. And channel work, we can only channel what is us, right? People will call it channel work because they haven't embodied in the aspect. So for them, it's channel work, right? But it's really just higher aspects of them. So a lot of these things we come in with, you're going to find you're going to resonate with some for a while, and then you're not going to resonate with anything at all. Because there also comes a time when we have to kind of break from all of it and find out what we think. And if we don't know what we think, once again, we can't be sovereign. We have to see, how do I think? It opens up doors, but it doesn't exactly it opens up the portal. It can open up a key for us. I can watch a YouTube video and someone will say something and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's just what I was thinking about. You know, that kind of unlocked something for me. And it wasn't even a video on anything spiritual at all. But for me in that moment, it was everything I needed. So I don't really have too many opinions on anyone's work specifically. But look if it's channeled work. But you don't have to, how can I say this? Channel work is it's still a very separated state. When you listen to any of those things on audio, I can't listen to any spiritual thing on audio because the voice of the person reading it taints the frequency of the words for me, right? So I can't listen to any of these books on audio. Bashard is a big one that a lot of people will talk about. And I think Bashard does channel galactic races. If I'm not, I could be incorrect on that, but I do think that is one of the things Bashard does. I've never really gotten too into Bashard. And it's funny because when you get to a certain place where you can't even really remember a lot of the stuff in the beginning that was pivotal, you know, because it's left behind in different dimensions and it feels old now, or it's still very separated, especially stuff written before 2012 when everyone was still very much in the separated state. The Secret, Seth books were written, you know, years and years ago. There are certain ones that Sandra Arquette wrote some too. They're really amazing reads when you're in those spaces for activations, but they're not they still have the older separation states in them, right? So like a lot of people don't read channel work. They'll say, oh, it's channel, I won't want to read it. I'll read it, but I still see it as separated off because the narrator still has not embodied in the aspect. The narrator is still keeping it separate, right? The person doing the channeling, whether it's even trans channeling, which is really not, you can look up what trans channeling means, but you really can't trans channel in a sense because everything's kind of you. So the whole kind of concept of trans channeling after a while seems kind of crazy because everything's you. It's just where you're getting it from. You know, when I used to channel, everything was coming from out here in, right? And that's how I would pick it up. Because the aspects of me that are talking are higher than the frequency of my body. So of course it's going to come down in, right? But I thought it was something else. But it's not anything else, it's still me. Now, the minute my frequency got high enough, everything is now coming from inside of me. I'm not getting it the same way. You don't get the information the same way anymore. It's all coming from somewhere else inside of you. But the way it comes in is different. In the beginning, it feels like it's coming outside in. And then it's going to feel like everything is inside. So look when you start to cross that threshold. Look at what you used to read and now you can't read it because it's old. I used to love the Penny Pierce books. Now I read them and they're very separated to me. But back in the day when I read them, they were amazing. So just don't get bogged down on what, look at everyone's work as activations, what it brings up for you, what it unlocks for you. But don't take it so much as yours, if that makes sense. Because yours is going to be different. You're going to see it differently, you might feel it differently, but in that moment, it's huge. So don't discount what's huge for you, but don't take it as that's always going to be huge for me. Okay, I'm going to go, and I'll see everyone next time.